What happened? Something hit power.
I'll give you guys video in a second.
This is Rowena Dooley asking Soul citizens to report for duty.
Hey, greetings. Welcome back to Soul Citizens. I'm GrifinGamingRPG. Today is Sunday, June the 30th, end of the month of June, and we are so happy to be here with you guys. I am joined by two of my buddies, my close buddies, my brothers from another mother. Today I've got with me, under the wrong name of Fast Cart,
I can play Fast Card today. I'm telling jokes.
Under the name of Fast Card. Actually, we might keep that because I think your jokes might be a couple rungs higher than if Fast Card's doing them. But
if they're good jokes, you do Fast Card a disservice.
If they're good,
I gotta beat the floor.
All right. Well, no, we gonna change that name real fast there because we definitely do not want that mistake to take place. We're here with my good friend CaptainSeriousFun. How you doing, Cap?
Greetings and salutations. I'm doing well. Griff, how's everybody doing out there? 07 is great.
Doing good.
Being here. Good. Great to have everybody here.
Good to have you here, brother, as always. And also to my to my left and your right, the one and the only, the man from down under, not as far as down as Calrati, but a little higher. Kelosal. What's up, buddy?
Doing good, Griff. I got the shirt that says fire because that's what the weather feels like down here. We on fire down in the south. Calrati was thinking about him because there's that hurricane that's coming over there.
Yeah. We got to check up on the brother and make sure he's going to be okay. Yeah. I always worry whenever some tropical seasons come down there. We always have to be thinking about him. So, and not just him, you too. I mean, I know you're a little further inland, but even so, every time I always ask you how are things going down there in Florida. So, but hey, yeah, hot and wet. Well, again, guys, thanks for being here. I know some of you may have seen an advertisement that went earlier talking about bounty hunting. Please forgive me. That was originally going to be our title for this week, but because bounty hunting got pushed back, we pushed it back and we brought up the subject for today, which is the title, The Dangers of Lore. And so we're going to be talking about that. Last week, we did a little bit of stuff when we talked about aliens and talked about lore, but I've got two people on here who really have had a good extensive experience in a variety of games, not just Star Citizen. And we're going to be talking about, I know people don't think about lore as, can it be bad? But if lore is not done well, there can be some things that can come out of it that can either turn off people from playing. Maybe people don't even pay attention to it. And we're going to kind of examine some of that today, especially in light of Cloud Imperium Games developing the lore for Star Citizen for Squadron 42. So hopefully you guys will be able to enjoy this ride, what we're going to be talking about today. CC Creator, thank you so much for that resub. 32 months, 32 months. I'm sorry. Oh my God, you've been around a long time. You're a veteran. Thank you. We truly, truly appreciate that. Don't forget to like and follow. If you guys are not liking and following us, we always could use that for the algorithms. It helps to let people know that we're out there. And we know that we're out there because people come up to us and tell us, hey, we've watched you guys before. So we really appreciate any time that you can let other folks know about these Soul Citizens. Let me kick off things here. Go to Kelosal first, since you're the last person I introduced. Kelosal, just an overall thing about lore. Letting people know what lore is, and to you, why is lore important in a game?
Lore gives direction, and I love lore. And you can't have gameplay is one different thing, but in order for a game to be great, or at least a game to be driving, it has to have a sense of direction, right? It has to have a sense of direction, and that's what lore does. Lore establishes a sense of direction for the gamers. It lets us know what the history is. It lets us know what the background, what the universe, what the world is that we're going to play. So if you don't have that sense of direction, then all you have is chaos, and you don't have a pretty good video game. And whatever gameplay you develop around it won't be long, even though if the gameplay is good. You got to have good lore to accommodate the gameplay. Yeah.
I mean, in Captain Serious, lore can be as simple as a one-sentence thing that says, the aliens have invaded. What will happen next? That could be all there is. And then it could be literally pages and pages and pages and pages. A game like I was playing Baldur's Gate 3. There are libraries with books with multiple pages of stuff to read. Lore could be a simple one sentence. It could be a compilation of information. So to you, give me your feeling about lore.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that far from Kelosal. Not for me. It's not just direction, but it's depth, right? It's a framework that speaks to the why behind why things happen, right?
Okay.
So there's player agency on the individual level. That's the why we control, and then there's stuff that is the world. It is the environment, right? We arrive with one sentence, Griff. The Tavaran split. Some of them just gave up their culture, and some of them didn't. Right there, that one sentence makes me want to dive into that and understand more about that, and what is it going to be like when I encounter a Tavaran, right? Like that type of stuff. So for me, it is about depth to the game world, and then context, the why behind why things happen, why players can do what they do. So
let me ask you guys, and whoever wants to answer this, if you both want to answer, that's fine. If just one. But here's my question to you. In a world of gaming, we don't get sold about lore. We get sold by some visual. And not that the visual can't expand or give an impression of what the lore is about, but I remember when I used to buy video games back in the day, it was not unusual for me to not only, guys, I know I'm going back, y'all, so forget Griff the Dinosaur, okay? But it was not unusual for me to go to, I'll say it for you, Captain Serious Fun, Electronic Boutique. Walk up to the shelf.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
grab that game made by EA or Activision or whoever, Microprose, and flip it over and read what this game was about. It wasn't just about what that pretty picture was in the front, but there was something telling me what this world was I was going to step into. So my question to you guys is this. That's not how we get games now. Now we watch the Game Awards or we watch CES, and even the people who come out on the stage, they don't come out and say, this new game we're building on is based on a world where blah, 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 blah. They say, this new game we've been working on for the last 7 years. It's been a technological feat, but here it is. We want to show it to you. That's all you get. Is lore being lost in this process? Are players that interested in it, or are they just interested in getting in? And part two to that question is it because we're just worried about getting in? Are we missing something by not taking the time to find out the lore?
So I'll go really quick. That you just described, you took me back now. Now I'm in my feelings, right? You took me back to those moments where there was a big box, right? and you turned over that big box at the retail store, and you spent time over there. Your mom could leave you there and go shopping because you were going to be in front of the big boxes.
Right.
Reading about each game and reading about what the game did. And I think that because the graphics were not photorealistic, right? Because the graphics could not present you with a fully realized 3D world that was close to our visuals, the narrative and the lore had to connect, right? It had to hit because they had to use other tools besides the visuals to build this world for you. And I think as graphics have become closer to photorealistic 3D graphics, that skill has become weak in many games, right? They go, oh, well, we don't have to spend any time laying this stuff out because we just showed them what it looks like, right? It's show, don't tell, right? This interesting take sometimes on movies, right? They're like, we could just show them, but I'm like, but a game experience requires it to stay longer and linger in the mind, right? And so what's interesting about Star Citizen is they're trying to do both, right? They're going hard on the graphics, and we've got a lore team giving us rich lore that, you know, for many of us who are lore interested or who did that work on the boxes, we want even more. So.
Yeah. Kelosal. So my question to you is this: today, is it necessary that lore? Are we saying that lore doesn't necessarily have to be based around narrative? In other words, I don't have to read something, but lore needs to be unveiled in some way, whether it's through gameplay or missions or, you know, how does lore get unveiled now? Because as we always joke around about, gamers don't read, right? You know, what is the process of delivering lore if gamers don't read? What do you see as the process now?
I mean,
and I know you're a reader. Y'all excuse Kelosal, y'all. He's a teacher, so for me to say people don't read messes with his brain. He had to recalculate a little bit there when I said that.
I mean,
okay, so
I'm trying to get there because it frustrates me. I mean, you think kids don't read. Adults are the worst when it comes to not reading. I mean, lore leads into 3 different categories. Lore helps out with current events. You know, and it also helps out with the role playing aspect. If you don't have a lore, how in the hell are you going to play the game in terms of socializing, and what role are you going to play? Because you don't know the characters. The characters are not available. The background, the origin. The lore is about origin.
Right.
It's about the beginning and the end, and a beginning leading to the end. And if you don't have that, you don't have a backbone. You don't have a potential to role play.
Yeah.
You have a lost role play. And when it comes to current events, you're going to have to just throw things out just to start to develop it. You could use current events. You could just throw out things. You could throw out a puzzle piece. It doesn't have to be, narrative. You can just throw out some pieces and say, boom, this is how we're going to do it. And next year, you throw out another different set of characters, and you got another set of lore that you just created.
Okay.
Also, shout out to Envoy for 32 months subscription. I saw your name up there.
Yes.
I just want to give you a shout out on that.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. And Envoy, go ahead, Klaus. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I just want to say that it's
well, I mean, you brought up the point that I was saying is that lore doesn't necessarily have to be developed through this pre-written text, but it does need to come out in some form. A story needs to unfold, and that story can unfold both what's currently happening in a game as well as background. And so like, for example, I think you gave the example earlier of something that could take place in the game. We may see the Banu in Star Citizen and learn some basic things about them just from the way we engage with them. But then we also know that there is a deeper background behind them that might take a little more effort than just the general narrative that takes place in conversation in a game or when there's encounters in the game. And so one of the things I'm hoping that we can do for the show today for you guys is, first of all, encourage you guys to take a look at the lore. When the monthly newsletters come out, when the website gets updated, when the lore team puts out stuff, sometimes it's difficult. I get it. Even finding the time. Sometimes you may think, it's a lot to read. You may actually find it only took you 5 minutes to read the thing. If you don't do anything but read the things that interest you, there was a series that came out about Origin systems, and I'm into Origin ships. So I was ready to read that. When the Drake one came up, I was like, but I ended up reading it anyway, But I want to encourage you guys to understand that a lot of what Star Citizen is going to be about is based upon this lore that they're building. And listen, the lore team has been here, guys, literally 13 years. They've been here since the very, very beginning. Okay. And there's a reason why Chris had them there from the very beginning. And there's still a team of, I think it's 4 people, Will Westbaum, Haddock, Sherry, and I forget who the other guy's name is, who've been working on this stuff for years, building it out. And there's still more that they're going to unveil. That's the reason why when we get these updates, you guys see that the Galactopedia gets updated. They're still building all that stuff. But today we're going to talk about what happens when lore goes wrong. Okay, so that's going to be what we're focusing in. So let's get these guys rolling because I want to tap into their brains. Go ahead, Colossal. What are you going to say?
And even if you don't like to read or have a hard time reading, AI's around now, folks.
Click
the immersive reader, click the read aloud, or copy and paste, and have the text being read to you. You'd be surprised at how quick of a read that is.
Mm-hmm.
It leads you to the next script, and the next script, and the next script. You start to understand these types of things.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
FC just dropped the link in there for you guys to check out, and it just gives information there. So please take a look at that too. Put it on the side there. So let's go ahead and jump into it, guys. This particular article I came across in, was it Massively? I think it was. I dug this out of. If you guys have it in front. Yeah, for Massively Overpowered. And the title of this article, guys, was Perfect 10, when MMO lore is at odds with a game. Okay. So I'm going to read this first part of this thing. We're not going to read the segments because these are going to be self-explanatory, but I just kind of want you to hear where they were going with this. It said lore is made up. We all know that. People who write the lore for games are not doing research into the real story and then letting us know how this wholly fictional thing plays out. It's the product of writers and designers sitting down at a table, talking about what they want to do with a game moving forward, and then creating a game with lore in it. So you're not playing a floating blue cube in a featureless void fighting red cubes, unless you're playing Second Life, I guess. Despite that, there are times when lore attacks, when the game you're playing clashes with the lore that has been written for it in various ways, or when the lore clashes with itself. It's something that can happen a lot of different ways, and thus today, we decided to look at all the ways that lore can fight war against its own home within the MMO. We've also decided to use our experience with the legal system, which is chiefly finding the second half of most Law and Order episodes, more interestingly, to examine whether or not these classes are innocent or should have been put into design jail. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to touch on some of these different topics and stuff and break these down. So let's start out with the very first one here, guys. Let me change our screen. And let's go ahead and bring this first topic up for everybody so that they'll know what the heck it is we're talking about. All right, for the dangers of lore. This one is called The Game Makes Something More Common Than the Lore Suggests. Okay. This is one that I think you guys might be able to identify with. If you can't, I'll put it to you guys. If you guys can identify with this, have you played a game or is even Star Citizen done something in the lore where the game made it more common than the lore suggests? Lore says this is a rare thing, or you're only going to run into it once in a while. Then you get into the game and you're doing it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, once again, the lore is just a guide. It is the sense of direction. It gives you history. And when you get into game, you would expect the game to give you more things than what the lore suggests. If the lore is going to suggest something, it's just leading to a certain direction. And once again, once you get there, then that's that that's that immersion, right? That's the aha moment, because once you get there, there could be additional things, whether you're playing a linear moment or non-linear game or things like that. That's when gameplay takes over.
So let me ask you a question then. Let's say that, like you and I right now, we're playing, all three of us are, we're playing Pox Day, right? Okay, I'll give you a better example. We were playing Mortal Online 3, right? Mortal Online 2. And there were Monitors, right? But there was a Monitor King, right? Now, if they say the Monitor King has slayed thousands, right? He's deadly, and anybody who goes and kills the Monitor King never comes back. But then if I go fight the Monitor King, not only with 20 people, but by myself, and I beat him, is there a clash in the lore?
Depends on
I think.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Colossal.
No, I was saying it depends on what it took for you to get there.
No. The lore said that his cat has slayed thousands. He has laid waste to lands. And I walk in by myself.
Yep. At level 1.
And I,
right? And 20 minutes at level 1, right? I'm just saying.
Or let's just say that even if I'm max level, but I'm just by myself.
Yeah.
But he has fought thousands on the battlefield.
Yeah, once again.
And I'm reading what they're saying. They're saying this is the danger. But this is the danger of the lore. If they made it common, if it's supposed to be this guy's supposed to be so awesome, Kelosal, but I go in by myself and wipe him out, you don't think there's a conflict in the lore?
I mean, I think that's some people will ask the game devs to, you might want to change this. Can you make it a little bit harder? He's supposed to have done this in the lore. Yeah, blah, 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 blah.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
It's writing lore that comes up against the idea that they want you to be, the central character.
I'm going to be happy. I'm going to say I beat him. I beat a person who was supposed to be difficult to beat.
Okay, but what if he wasn't difficult?
Well, great. You see that right now with Elden Ring.
Okay. Oh, right. That's very true.
Breaking their computers again and breaking their remotes again because they're saying, this new DLC is so difficult.
That's very true. And to your point, that is, to me, I see a conflict. I see the conflict as being, you've built me up for this thing from me reading the lore that this Monitor King kicks everybody's butt. Now, you and I have seen the Monitor King fight before, and maybe you haven't seen it, Captain Serious, but when they go fight this guy, it's about 40 people that go fight him. And at least 8 or 9 of them die in the process, okay? I mean, you've got to fight like about 8 or 10 different Monitors to get to this guy. And by the time you get to him, they lock you in the room with him. You can't run out once you're in there. And he just starts laying waste to people, okay? And I'm saying, that's what I'm looking for. But if we walk in there and within 10 seconds, we kill this guy, I got a problem.
You might want to do some more reading because those 1,000 people that Minotaur killed probably was just a village. Or some people over 30 years.
See, now you're eisegeting on my exegeting, so I ain't gonna even go there on that one. Okay, but
I'll just give you the other part. What research did you do?
The research, the research. I just said I read the lore. That was all the lore I got. Now, maybe he fought 1,000 midgets. I get it. Okay, I'm just saying that the impression I got was this was gonna be a mega fight, and I got that. But and I guess the reason why we're sharing this is that we're talking about when lore doesn't match up with gameplay. Right. And lore does build a certain expectation that sometimes it's not even the lore. Kelosal will tell you this, and you guys too were playing PAX Day. Sometimes it's the stories that other people come back and tell you, right? That becomes part of lore. Right. They went to the cave and they got their butt kicked, right? That starts to build a lore even amongst the game players that, dude, don't mess with them Inquisitors. You know what I mean? All I know is that they're bad. Mm-hmm.
Developers are afraid to have, even when they've written the lore, they're afraid to have systems in the game that really almost all players can't somehow conquer.
Get past, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And, I'm kind of okay. I'm coming from a game like Elite Dangerous where you're not the hero. You're not the center of the universe. You're another person just trying to go along to get along. Right? And when that's the case, all kinds of stuff can come and just wreck your day, right? And there are some things that will always wreck your day, no matter what, right? And when lore is written that way, it's a different game than being Neo, being the one, all the time.
Yeah.
And so I like when lore is written that way, and I like when it's consistent that way. And when it's not, you're right. It takes you out of it, right?
Okay.
It takes you out of it.
Okay. All right. Let's take a look at number 2. In the dangers of lore. Systems that have no lore explanation. And I think this may only count for games where lore is, pretty prevalent and important to the game. That sometimes there's something that happens in the game and a player will ask themselves, I don't understand why I have to do this. I'm trying to think of an example. Is there an example like that in Star Citizen? I know that. Go ahead, Kelosal. You got something?
No. I mean, a system is part of the game that has no lore explanation.
Yeah, something that's tied in. Like you do something in the game, let's use Death of a Spaceman for example, right? Okay, here's a real good one. The most recent update to coming back. What's it called?
Origin being used.
No. What is it we do in the game?
Revival.
Respawning. Right. There were. Remember when they made this most recent change? People flipped out. Right. People were like, "Oh, so now when I go into the Pisces, I can revive myself because of the commercial. I've died 1,000 times." Right. And that flipped people out because that system them didn't make sense. Now, the rumor I have about it, this could be wrong, was that if you go into a Pisces and if you go into the what's the other vehicle called? The ground vehicle called?
Ursa?
What's it called? The NERSA Medevac. If you go to that panel, there are 2 drawers down there that open up. And from my understanding is that those are going to actually be used to put something inside of it. And that will be some type of consumable that might tie into the ship being able to respawn and heal. Now, if that's the case, and then we have a limitation there, that's fine. So that means you can't do it all, this puts a limitation into it is my point. So I'm saying if there's explanations as to why you can do stuff, whether it's in lore or mechanics, people can deal with it. But is there a block when lore doesn't explain it? Or if it doesn't match lore, if it doesn't explain why, how is it I'm able to respawn in this game? You claim that it's supposed to be a real life simulator, but I'm able to come back.
Right.
And they wrote Death of a Spaceman to fill that gap.
Yeah, that means you just have, either some people found some things that shouldn't have been found or needed to be found, or there's just no sense of direction in where they were going with that.
Yeah. Does it break immersion, I guess is the other thing. If you've got lore built around certain things, then all of a sudden I do something in the game that seems significant, but there's no explanation for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there are a few things like this in the game because the question, the language is important. There's lots of things we can imagine lore for.
Yeah.
When we see it.
Yeah.
Right. Like Jade talks about in the comments right now. Jade's talking about the T's of spaceport signs. Right. I can imagine that the same technology that floats those signs is the same technology that floats Orison.
Yeah.
Right. But there's no lore explanation.
Right.
To her point, there's nothing that tells us why it's doing what it's doing.
Yeah.
Right. Same thing with quantum drive cooldown and spooling. Insurance claim timers, item and ship durability, repair.
Yeah.
These things happen and we sort of want them to happen as mechanics. There's not yet any lore based explanation for those things.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what does it mean that I have to cool down and spool up? Why?
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, these things happen. They're interesting to happen. We want them to happen, but there's not yet a lore explanation. And so there's big pieces of lore for gameplay pieces we don't have yet. And sometimes in this case, there's no lore for little things that we could ask some why questions about. So,
yeah, I guess my thing is it really that much of a big deal?
Listen. The title
of
the show is Dangers of Lore.
Hold on. I'm just saying. The point is, what I'm trying to say is from this is it that much of a big deal where it breaks the gameplay?
No, it is a valid question. No, it's a valid question. Right. I think, I'll give you an example of a question that I think does come up. People have asked why we don't have nukes in Star Citizen.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they created a piece of lore to explain, because that's the first thing the players, we should be in the future, we should be able to do such and such. And then they say, well, no, those have been banned. There's a piece of lore that they put in. It has nothing to do with nothing technical. It's just the fact that they said they put that in the lore that you can't do nukes. Okay. Right. So but it does that when people say 900 years from now, how come we can't do such and such? Maybe the limitations are technical limitations. So they write lore to fit that, whatever the case may be. I'm just saying, and I do agree with you, Kelosal. Maybe there are some things that happen and people never do ask that question of, well, why? Because it just never comes up. It's such a small item. I think this might have more to do with something that when people are taking down a lore path and all of a sudden there's a break in the bridge, it's like you're going down this journey and then there's no bridge there all of a sudden. But I have to do such and such, and you say, well, why do I have to do that? Maybe there are no big, strong reasons for it. I don't know. But it's just one of the
another great one is droids, right?
Yeah, droids is another one. Yeah. That's another one. Yeah.
People ask, where's my R2-D2 and my C-3PO? Well, they wrote lore to tell you why.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's check out number 3 here. Ooh. The current lore contradicts the older lore. Star Citizen, redacted. Any thoughts on this one, guys?
Or we have to fix it, or we wrote ourselves into a corner.
Yeah.
Or
yeah. Any thoughts on this one? And this can go to what I just mentioned about technical limitations. CIG thought they could do something, and then find out that they can't. Lore gets changed. Some people beefed about Death of a Spaceman changing when it first was implemented. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yes. That's it. That was going to be my example.
Yeah.
Was the the changes that we've seen more recently, and not just the most recent one, but the evolution of Death of a Spaceman was a lot more accommodating than the original version. The original version had people thinking it might have real meaning to Iron Man this game, right? Or to try and go and never die, right? Because of the costs that might be involved.
Right.
But I think they've gone from that radical position on the earlier and recognized that most gamers, most of the time, might not be able to accommodate that, right? In terms of their investments. So it's become more and more mollified, in my view.
Yeah.
The further that the development has come along, and it's not unreasonable for it to have been so.
Yeah.
It's just that it has changed, right? It is inconsistent with the earlier take on that.
Yeah.
Another one that I give you is the way that I experienced the Van Duel lore early on versus how we're experiencing them now. Maybe I'm wrong about this, right? This is a moment where maybe I just didn't catch it.
Yeah.
But I don't remember the Van Duel earlier on having relationships with any other race.
Yeah, from the early days.
And then I remember from the early days, and then I saw, the Banu have connected with everybody. Right?
Yeah.
I feel like they made a statement about the Van Duel. Then as they were evolving the Banu thing, they stuck that in there. And I went, wait a minute, whoa, the Van Duel? The Banu and the Van Duel talk? When did that happen? I remember saying that to myself.
Yeah.
Right? And so I feel like that's one for me, unless it was always there and I just missed it, right? Which is also a possibility.
Do you all want to see Kelosal cry? I'm going to give y'all one right now. Kelosal, remember Pyro 3? What was it supposed to be originally?
I'm laughing at somebody crying. That's terrible. I apologize.
What was Pyro 3 supposed to be? Do you remember Kelosal?
No, I do not. I mean, what was Pyro supposed to be?
If you went to the star map back in the day,
right,
it showed a completely lava magma planet.
Okay, that was Pyro 3.
Yeah.
The floor is lava all over.
It was red. I mean, that bad fella was glowing red. Now, supposedly, and I know Jade's in chat, I think that CIG stated that they were going to still have an area there that was like that, but it definitely became a change in the lore. But based upon where that planet is located and everything else, look at what Nyla said. Nyla's starting some stuff. But based on how the planets are now and the way the system is now, it makes sense that planet be a habitable planet, right? But that was a change, and so they've redacted and they've modified it. But we have to make sure this happens so that you don't get a situation where there's some old lore in there and then some new lore comes in or current lore and then there's some conflict. And CIG's got to do that. They've got to go back and look at everything, which is and also it messes with our heads too, because if we've adapted certain lore in our heads and then it changes, it kind of throws us off as well. Thank you, Thrakazad.
It happens.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Thrakazad. And it happens. I mean, the good thing that CIG is developing their lore and stuff like that, unlike other established companies like Star Wars, who screws up lore and gives us different types of canons and legends and stuff like that. So,
right.
my condolences to the people who create Acolyte. But other than that, I mean, it's just it can be happening. Things can be retconned. And
right.
so this
Right.
is an early opportunity. If you make something that much of a blunder, either you had a major transition of lore writers that happened that broke apart that type of dynamic in terms of understanding what their intent was. with that piece, and then you bring in some new folks that really don't understand what you created, or basically didn't take the advice of other people, including the passionate fan base, about that.
Be glad we have a smart person here.
I lost my bet. I just want to say I lost my bet on the over-under as to when Kelosal was going to mention Acolyte. It was half an hour.
Oh,
I took the under.
You took the under?
I took the under.
Oh, okay. You all forgive you all forgive the old man, Kelosal. That's why we have a smart guy like Kelosal here. The word I've been meaning to say is retcon, not redacted. So thank you for saying that word, Kelosal. This retcon, yes. Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, like you said, it can happen, and things do change. I'm glad you're saying that, Kelosal, because sometimes people get so hard about the lore that when something changes, the first thing they want to go back and say is, "Well, that's not what they wrote down the first time." Well, the answer is, "Well, yeah, guess what? They're changing it." And that's pretty much what it is. Because we have to, they have to change it because there may be some other things that have come up now that make that change have to happen. I know we may embrace that original lore, but the reality of it is that sometimes it will change. Okay. All right. Number 4. The current lore contradicts the feel of other lore. Now, this one is a little bit interesting. And it's basically just saying that when there's some lore in there, it just seems like it conflicts or goes against maybe something else that's in the game. I don't know. You guys?
Yeah, I'll give you one.
Okay.
I'll give you one. The lore around the transition and the maintenance of the United Empire of Earth. Right?
You would say empire.
From the United Planets of Earth, right? The United Empire of Earth.
Yeah.
You had a whole period of the Messer regime. You were remained organized after the Messers as an empire.
Mm-hmm.
That, for me, contradicts the feel that we're getting from the Squadron 42 and other stuff that's a little bit more heroic and noble, right? I feel like some of the characters that we're getting are evoking the idea of a republic and not an empire. Right? An empire, when you decide to call yourself an empire, or even post-Messer, you decide to stay with imperial forms, you got a certain type of rapaciousness, a certain type of dystopianness, a certain type of strong authoritarianism.
You're making Kelosal smile. You're just going down the Hurston line of thinking, oh my God.
Right?
Oh my God.
Right? And I don't mind some of this other noble, heroic sensibilities and all this other stuff. What's the name of the in lore? What's the name of the prime directive in Star Citizen?
We said it last week.
Yeah.
You talk about the one for the United Empire.
Fair Chance Act. Thank you, Jade.
Yeah. The Fair Chance Act. Fair Chance Act ain't imperial. I don't feel that's imperial, right? And so for me, this is one where I feel little contradictions, right? It's a little bit.
Yeah, every government using it. But if we're going to talk about your lore, we should understand how we got to the UEE.
Yeah,
we're going to go ahead and do that, because when you look at the first transition in terms of the human colonial expansion era that happened around 2380 to 2530, and then it moved from there. The humans are expanding, moved there. You call United Nations of Earth, where now all of a sudden you get this first international or galactic forming of the human race. And then you go over to, I'm moving on just quickly because there's a lot of information here. Then you go on to the United Planets of Earth, which is pretty much mostly of all human controlled systems, humans, right? And then what happened with that? You had two major events: the First Tavaran War, and then you had the Messers coming in, right? Jay says UNE was the best. And so that transitions on to the UEE, where you have more of a diverse galactic empire, completely with the Tavarans and the Shions and the Banus and things like that. So nice little transition that they've all had, all dealing with the empire. But heading towards a republic, we had to go to Levski for their betrayal.
Captain, you notice there's somebody here who has no problem using the word empire over and over again. I want you to notice
just
that.
Leaning in.
There's no problem using that word at all. Okay.
And then talking junk about Levski. Leave him alone. Remember Anthony Tanaka. That's what you need to do over there.
I'm encouraging my girl. Hey, Jay, come on, Jay. All right. By the way, she's got a good podcast with that radio that she's got going on.
Yep.
So,
all right.
Absolutely.
Listen to that.
Absolutely.
Very good that Jay's got going on.
All right. Number 5, the dangers of lore. Lore says something is possible, but there is no system for it. And a lot of this stuff is dealing with lore versus game mechanics. So just be aware of that, guys, when we talk about this. When we say system, we're just saying that lore says you can do something, but there's nothing in the game that allows you to do it. And mind you, it means that you can do it now in the game, not something in the past, right? But maybe there's something that the lore says that you should be able to do. And then you try and get in the game and say, well, where is it? And, it's not there. Let me ask this while we're... Go ahead.
I was just going to say the whole area of exploration sort of falls under this, right?
Yeah.
There continues to be this idea of discovering stable jump points. Hell, in the lore, there's a system called Oratani, where we have a bunch of humans we lost contact with because the jump point closed. Right. So there's incentives to go and figure that stuff out, and we just don't have the systems yet to do that stuff. I think that, or exploration, jump point, discovery, terraforming is something that's in the lore. Playing a role in that. That whole segment of the game just isn't there yet in terms of systems.
Yeah, I remember. Go ahead, Klaus.
Can we talk about the Daymar rally as a part of this? Right, because that wasn't a part of lore until it got so popular to now it is.
Yeah, this is like the reverse of it, right? Where lore actually got them to build a system, right? I mean, that's a very cool suggestion. Yeah, the opposite of this. Yeah, that's a positive. Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, I remember when I played Eve, one of the things that drew me into Eve after leaving Galaxies was I saw a commercial that was like, you can do whatever you want to do in Eve. You can be an entrepreneur, a trader, a miner, blah, 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 blah. And then I went into Eve and I found out that, yeah, you can do all that stuff, but there are people who've been there like 3-4 years ahead of you, and there's no way you're ever going to catch up with them. And they've dominated most of the space, and there's no room for you. And every place you go, you got to fight and blah, 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 blah. That was frustrating because I was looking to do something like that, and there was no system for a person like me who was brand new in the game. I'm not saying that I had to be equal to them, but the process was just so difficult. It was just not an easy thing for me to do coming in as a new player. But the lore, the marketing of the game gave me the impression that I could do those things, and I found out there were only very few of those things that I could do. There was supposed to be a bounty hunting system in Eve at that time. This was years ago, guys, so maybe now it's there. But they're supposed to be able to hire somebody. They said that you could hire people to go after somebody, and it was broken in the game. There was no way to do it. There was no system there to support what I was supposed to be able to do in the game. And that was very frustrating because as a miner, I didn't have a big org. I didn't have somebody to, if someone came after me, some way to go after them. If I got attacked, if I lost out, I just generally lost out. And that became a very, very frustrating piece for me in Eve. That I couldn't do that because there was no system there for me to be able to counter something that happened to me in the game. So
right, yeah. The only other one I would add to this one, I've been thinking about number 5 for a while. Mm-hmm. The other thing I would add to this one is voting. Right, we get to vote every 10 years. For an Imperator, and for those who were around in 2020, that was a system that was an in-game but was out of game that we got to participate in, right? But lore says something is possible. I'm hoping when we get to the 2030, right, or the 2960 elections, that the same way that we pick up, the equivalent of Chinese New Year packets in the game, the same way that we pick up holiday boxes, the same way that we have item banks. We'll have item banks very shortly. My hope is that we will be able to go in and cast our vote in game because lore says it's possible. I'd like to see a system in there to do it.
Yeah. Hook says every 10 years, ? It should be every 4. I was willing to go more like 5, Hook, to cut it by half of that, mostly because of the cycling of gameplay, how long players will play a game and stay in it. And I kind of felt like, 5 years, if you knew that, an election was coming up, you may still have some of the same people who voted in the previous game. How many people who voted in 2010 will still be here in 2020 will be here in 2030? I don't know, but I do wish that the time frame was shrunk down a little bit more. And to Captain's point, the system for doing it, hopefully they will build out something in the game, because they did all the advertising and the marketing and the propaganda happened in game. To Captain's point,
right.
Yeah,
right.
Let's have a player forced lore. Create a blockade around one of the major planets.
Oh Lord, there we go.
Blow up every ship in the area. You know what I'm saying? And demand that Addison resigns. He could do something. Blow up every interest that may pop in there. Create something. I mean, that could go in there, right? As Laura says, something is possible.
Mm-hmm.
There are no systems for it. I mean, so usually you don't get player generated content, or trying to find some way to create something from nothing. Interesting.
I'm gonna put an 11 point out of 10 in here, Captain Serious, called when you try to bring lore from another game into Star Citizen.
Blockade.
We got people trying to bring their Sith attitudes over to the Star Citizen universe. So we need to have 11 points on this one. Okay.
The Plagueis maneuvers.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what we're gonna call it, the Plagueis predicament. So no, you're right, Kelosal. I would hope that type of stuff would start to build out in the game. Eve did do that. Eve had elections for people and stuff, and I hate to keep referencing Eve, but I'm only doing it because there are games that have done that, and I think that even things such as political, economic type of upheavals and turning could definitely be something that would happen in game and would support lore and hopefully be built into lore, as you mentioned earlier, right? Things like Operation Pitchfork, which was a backer type of idea, was something that CIG adopted. You mentioned the Daymar Rally, that got accepted and adopted.
Miserably.
Yeah, I'm just saying it can happen. It would be very, very cool if they did that. Okay. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to take a quick commercial break because we're at number 5 out of 10. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this. I'm trying to read all the stuff you guys have been putting in chat. You guys have been putting a ton of stuff in here for us to try to keep track of. We're going to take a commercial break and then we're going to be back in just a minute and we'll cover some more. There we go. We are on our ad break. To our subscribers.
Those of you who are still here, go ahead, Greg.
No, you do it. You got it.
I was just to say, if you're still here, you're a subscriber, and we want to just say thank you. It's a blessing to have you in community with us. We appreciate your support. The resources that go into your sub we tend to put back out to the community. So we're just thankful. And thank you for being here. I'm gonna leave 30 seconds for Griff so I can shut up.
Oh yeah, no, he said exactly what my sentiments are. We really appreciate you guys as always. We do have a new video that's going to be coming out by the producers. It'll be out on tomorrow. Hopefully you guys will be able to see it on YouTube, called what's it called? Oh, Alternative Facts.
Alternative Facts.
Alternative Facts. Kelosal, I know that's one of your favorite phrases, Alternative Facts. And that'll be out tomorrow. So hopefully you guys will be able to check that out. We think you'll enjoy it. Okay. Alrighty, we are back. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that commercial, whatever it may have been. Let's go ahead and jump into this next one, number 6 out of 10. Lore characters behave according to mechanics separate from the players. Let me give you an example of what this means. We have been plenty of times going to Orison, Siege of Orison. And we get there and got ourselves all equipped and we're walking through the place and we get attacked. Right? And we get into this fight and we're getting shot up pretty bad. And where are these guys at? They're way over there. They're over there. And we kill them. And then we go over to strip them. And this guy's got a shotgun, but he's killing me from 200 meters away.
Right. Over there with a shotgun.
And we're sitting here saying to myself, hey, this guy does a sniper rifle. He's got a freaking shotgun. How is he killing me? Yeah, what happens when the mechanics of the players, for example, Kelosal, I know CIG is trying to correct this now, not correct it, but make it real, but NPCs having unlimited ammo, right? You go down and start shooting with them, right, Kelosal? And you've only got 5 rounds or 5 mags, and they just seem to have an unlimited supply, Right. You guys got anything else that you can think of?
I mean,
that was going to be my one. I want to see NPCs reload. I want to pause the same way I got to pause. Right.
I mean,
I want to also see NPC ships having to refuel, repair, rearm, run out of stuff. You know. So same thing there. So
yeah.
I mean, I would like to see. I mean, don't we see some elements of this in the game? We're dealing with the drop zones or whatever you call the landing zones, distribution hubs. When we see the people actually who work in there pick up guns, and start shooting, right?
Yes.
You see some bit of that.
That's when it works. Right, but that's when it works. That's when it works.
Well, that right. That's when it works. I would also love to see them start opening doors. So instead of me getting shot while I'm trying to go ahead and open the door, maybe something happen to them where I can go ahead and give them some backup, or maybe they can go ahead and start healing me if I'm down. That type of gameplay. I mean, things that I can't do that they can.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm seeing from this statement here. You know, I would like to see. There are times when you go into a certain battle, you get interdicted, and this person is saying, "I need help," and they're in a Starfarer, and then all of a sudden you're attacking 2 other ships that are out there, and then all of a sudden here comes the advocacy.
Yeah.
Right. They come in and they come help out. So there are some elements of that, but I would like to see a little bit more dealing with assistance.
Yeah.
To the player.
Yeah. That would be a positive version of it, right? And don't get me wrong, I agree with you 100%. It would be great when we start seeing that type of response. I think we did see it at one point at Port Olisar when criminals would show up, advocacy would show up. You know, if you were trying to come into the port, you'd see them show up. But I think here, this is dealing more with the opposite of that, of when the NPCs or the game is able to do something that players cannot do. And you know, you say, well, how come they've got more? You know, they've got unlimited ammo. I only have so much ammo. One of the things, like for example, I rarely see is NPCs taking injuries. Either they're alive or they're dead. I want to see them limp like we limp. You know what I mean? You know that they seem like they're always at 100% health. Either they're dead or they're at 100%. Now maybe there isn't that. Maybe the health pool. Maybe we just haven't seen that happen. I have seen them die slowly. You know, but I haven't seen this guy over there. I shot him and he's limping or he's moving slower because I hit him several times. It seems like no matter what, they're always on 100 when I'm at 40, you know. So that's a problem, you know, and hopefully they'll work through that as well. I know that the ammo thing is something CIG has showed us that they're going to do, where they'll have to run to their own ammo box to reload. And we've also seen it where you go to them sometimes and they have no ammo on them. They're all out, you know. Their gun is empty even. I've seen that happen in the game so far. Okay. All right. Let's hit number 7. Lore is used as a defense for not changing systems.
I haven't experienced that a lot here. I mean, you know, some people misinterpret lore for Chris Roberts don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely saw that with Eve. Not Eve, but we definitely seen that with Elite Dangerous.
Elite,
right? You know, I mean, sometimes it was used as a defense, but not changing that. I mean, Lord, like I said, it can be, unless you're planning to retcon things, guys. I mean, that could be very, very trivial.
Yeah.
When there's something in game and people basically discover something and all of a sudden you're not getting the things that lore is claiming that you should be getting, or you're getting some things and some people are saying you're getting way too much and stuff like that, and some people are saying, well, this is what it is, we're going to deal with it, and that's how it's going to be. You can upset a lot of players in that piece. So I mean, like I said, lore is an instruction guide. It's meant as a guide for you to go to where they want you to do in game, and what they want you to do.
So in light of that, the question becomes, and again, the reason why we're calling this the dangers of lore and not the benefits of lore, is does bad lore become something that can actually turn off players? Like when it doesn't match up. You know, if they say that, I go back to that old story what I was about the Minotaur. You know, someone said, I think you said it, Kelosal, you were talking about Elden Ring. Elden Ring is kind of almost, again, the old throwback to the same type of pushback we heard when Dark Souls came out. There were a lot of people who Dark Souls felt it was unplayable. It was too difficult. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not that it is a difficult game, but difficult is being related into a comparison to what else out there, because there weren't a lot of games out there that were, what some people would say, were that brutal, that were that punishing. But there was a time when games were always punishing. Like there would be times when you'd have to play something. I watch people now play something and they can defeat it after several attempts in the same gameplay session. But I remember back in the day where you would try to do something and you just had to come back like later, like maybe days or weeks later or several levels later before you could accomplish something. You couldn't figure out, if I just do this, this, and this, or maybe I rolled twice when I should have rolled 3 times, and if I did it 3 times, I'd win. It didn't work like that. Thank you, Danger Oboe. Yep. So, this idea of can lore be in such a place in a game that it makes it to the point where people don't want to play it, or it doesn't match, and it doesn't keep their interest, is what I'm saying. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. I know with Baldur's Gate 3, there was so much lore in there, it was almost a little tiring. There was so many books to read, and I was so paranoid that if I didn't read this book, because a lot of them gave clues to stuff that you'd come up to in the game, and if you got to a certain point in the game and didn't read a certain book, you didn't know what to do with it when you got there. It might have been unlocking something really cool, but you missed out on it. So at that point, I felt like lore was maybe a little bit too much, but maybe it was just too much for me. I know one person who read all that stuff. Kai Zen read all that stuff. And for me, I was like at 70%, maybe 80% of the reading he did. It was like overwhelming for me. It was just too much reading.
I went the other way. I didn't read everything in Skyrim. Mm-hmm. I felt like I missed out because then people be in conversations and be like, oh, this, and you miss out. And then there's things that you miss out on. And so I that's why I'm taking my time with Baldur's Gate, because I'm doing everything.
Deep lore. But didn't at one point, correct me if I'm wrong, Griff, didn't at one point Elite Dangerous sit there and say that you were going to be able to walk through your ships?
Oh, yeah.
So they sat there and basically
let Cap talk about that
gamers. They basically told the gamers, who wants to do that?
Yeah.
People don't want to walk through their ships, and a lot of people were PO'd because that was one of the promises within the lore, and it was promised from the developers that you were going to be able to walk it through your ships, and they walked it back. That's what this.
That's a classic to this one. Yeah, this
is basically lazy ass shit. I'm sorry, LAS folks. Last.
Yeah.
Okay, it's developers not wanting to change the rules because they don't want to rewrite it. They don't. It is what it is. We're not going to, even though they know that that's probably the best thing to do. They just completely don't want to.
They don't want to do it, or the limitations of the engine or whatever. Go ahead, Cap. You could talk about.
Yeah, I was just going to be fair to Elite Dangerous while hammering it similarly. So Promise, the same way that we got to be careful about Promise with Star Citizen, we got to be careful about Promise with Elite Dangerous. Mm-hmm. David Braben did talk about in the Kickstarter wanting people to eventually be able to walk through their ships. That was part of the reason, to Colosal's point, why they got the money they got, right? Because people thought that this is what they were going to be trying to do.
The Armstrong moment, right?
Mm-hmm. The Armstrong. To Griff's point, they decided not to invest and spend any money on another engine that would allow them to do all these things, but to build the game on the engine they had built in-house, an engine called Python. Mm-hmm. They had built in-house. Well, Python doesn't really allow for a lot of things. It allows for limited instancing, right? So you didn't have big groups getting together. It allowed for limited there's just limits to it. And one of the limits with the development team, as they invested or didn't invest in it, was ship interiors. So then, to Colosal's point, they tried to justify it by saying, well, who wants to do that anyway? Mm-hmm. Like trying to gaslight us, right? When the whole time people were looking at these ships, they could look back. You could look back as you looked into your ship from third person. You could look back in VR and you could see interiors of the ships, right? And so people wanted to inhabit those interiors, and when they launched their last update, their big update, Odyssey, and it wasn't the case. The arc of people's interest in that game waned, and I don't know the extent to which that was a lore-based pushback, but we do know that they tried to use the idea that we didn't want it. And I went from being engaged with Star Citizen 30% to being engaged with it 100% because I was done. So anyway, that's when it can go bad, right? It can go bad.
Yeah,
that went bad. Yeah.
No, thanks for mentioning that, Kelosal, because that is definitely an example of there was, and there's a part of me that feels for the elite community, because I know how much we appreciate being able to do something as simple as walk off of a ship, walk on a planet, stuff that we take for granted. And that community was truly, truly disappointed when they're something that was a part of their, from the very beginning, a dream that they wanted to do in that game. But the company decided that they just were not going to accomplish. And it was the company. The company's response was, well, if you only do it a few times, you'll get bored with it. Who's after the fifth time, you won't want to do it anymore.
Yeah,
that was
disturbing, because I'm an Elite fan. I think people should play both Star Citizen and Elite Dangerous. They are two different games.
Yeah.
And I love both games, but that was one of the ones that basically took me to the side, and I was like, oh, okay, all right, we're fine.
Yeah,
no problem. I'll just go ahead and back off on it, because that was one of the things that we were promised, and we didn't get that piece. And it seems to me that we got a little bit of, whether for whatever reason possible, we have a blatant refusal to do what was promised.
Absolutely. Okay. All right, let's hit our next one here. Number 8. The current story suggests a system change, but that new lore is ignored. So this one kind of is, to me, important to Star Citizen. There's a lot of stuff, because there's an evolution of the development of Star Citizen, that there are certain parts of the lore that we can see. There are parts of the lore that say that there's something else that's supposed to be happening, but it's just not in the game yet. And an example of that is what we were talking about earlier about the respawn. CIG, when they gave us this first iteration of this version of Death of a Spaceman, to your point, Captain Serious, you talked about how earlier this was supposed to be, it felt like it was going to be a much more punishing type of a thing. That there would be limited amounts of times that you could survive dying. And there's kind of like a throwback to the old days of when you used to get 3 lives and that was it. But the idea was that you would, take some type of injury. Maybe when you came back, there was some type of effect that maybe your arm was messed up, right? So now you would have to get a cybernetic arm, something like that. There were all these different variations of what was going to happen in the earlier days. And then when we finally got the one we got, we basically come back at 100%, right? And there's no loss of anything, reputation, none of that stuff gets affected. But we've seen it slowly start to change, that they've been trying to change it a little bit. And eventually, depending on what the lore team finally comes up with, and also what CIG comes up with technically, and also what they come up with as far as game design goes, we still don't know what the final version of Death of a Spaceman will be. I think originally it was supposed to be if you died, you had to pass on your property and stuff would pass on to a next of kin or something like that.
Yeah,
that
with an estate tax. Yep.
Yeah, there was a lore story of passing it on. There was also a question about whether or not, if you died, did reputation die with you? Did this person have to start fresh? I think they also talked about there was some transference of that. Maybe you weren't at 100% of what you were, but there was some percentage of it. There's all types of variations, is my point, of what's happening with this thing. And so as the systems are being developed, that's why I said this one's a little bit difficult when we talk about the current story suggests a system change. Because like I said, when these new vehicles came out with this last thing with respawning, they did a twist there that none of us expected, right? And now they're saying, now some people say, well, is that because of game mechanics? It allows people to come into the game faster without having to go back to their home medical clinic or whatever. Or is it temporary? Is that just there now because they're testing it? And they've said that. They told us that this is a test, y'all. It's not permanent, that they're going to see where this goes. So this aspect of lore right now could change into a new lore as well later on. So this is a little volatile because our lore is not nailed down yet, and it is probably in a place of constant flux, and maybe even later, right? Later on, the lore could change even again, even when the game is out. What do you guys think?
I mean, this is a new, this is a newer game with newer lore. It's not really we have established now, but it's not established like WoW or World of Warcraft. And
Right.
we have books, for God's sakes, that are out there. And although there are illustrations and articles and journals and things that Star Citizen calls them illustrations and stuff like that, it's still an ongoing developing process. And there may be things now that may be ignored that the old lore maybe need to be revamped. We can talk about the Vanduul for one. There are things that we're still learning about that, and there are questions that are being brought up.
Right.
You heard Cap talk about the Banu at one point, and then all of a sudden the Banu knows everybody. I mean, that was one particular thing that Cap brought up about the Banu earlier in the conversation. So I mean, I guess CIG kind of gets a pass for me on this one because as we're developing the lore and still trying to understand this piece, I haven't seen any ignorance in CIG to input new lore and modify the old. I haven't seen any lack of interest for that.
To your point, recently they've been posting, I don't know if you guys have noticed this when they've been doing those lore posts recently, they've been posting older posts again, like stuff that came out like in 2015 and 13. And a lot of times people in the community will say, oh, that stuff is old. Oh, it's probably changed. But I've been noticing that they've been going back and taking stuff that was made back then and recently reposting those articles again. It'll say published back in September of 2014, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, are they reinforcing and re-educating and reminding us of stuff that maybe people don't think is still relevant? Because I don't think they would post it again if they weren't looking to go down that direction. What do you think?
And that's go ahead. I'm sorry, Cap.
No, I was just going to say that's exactly how I'm taking it. Is if they make the effort to post something again, what they're saying is they're trying to do two things. They're trying to introduce new players to these things, and they're reinforcing with old players what we said in this piece of lore. This is what we intend to go with because we didn't have to reinforce it.
Yeah.
Right. And why would we introduce it to new players if it wasn't going to be the case when we didn't have to? Right. So my guess is it's both of those things. I absolutely take this current and I treat commercials as lore. Right. So that's the volatility around this particular one. When you get the Ursa Medevac commercial, it is the current story in respawning. And it suggests a system change. It suggests a move away from death of a space person, as Jade says in the chat, right? And I don't believe they're going to move that far away from it. I think they're going to shift a little bit, but we're still going to get death of a space person. And people who have embraced this new model of taking your medevac with you and respawning 1,000 times until the base is cleared, or respawning 1,000 times until the outlaws are taken out and you don't have to worry about anything and there's no consequence. They're going to see the change to death of a space person as this new lore that was certified in the commercial being now ignored for something else. That's how I think they're going to experience it.
Okay.
So that's the danger of having put something like that in the commercial, unless they had planned to go in that direction, which I don't think they're going to completely go in that direction. And to your point, Griff, they told us, right? They told us they're testing, but people take that stuff. People take these commercials as they feel like lore. Yeah. So
there's a colossal one aspect in the game is, let's go back to medical again. Before we had the Pisces and all of that, it was the Cuddy Red, right? And when they used to describe these different ships, it was there was like 3 ships they kind of went with. One was the Cuddy Red, which was supposed to be, it was described as being like an ambulance, basically to pick up people and deliver them to a hospital. That was the original. It was that, and the only other ship that we had that had anything to do with medical would have been the Endeavor, and that's the Endeavor with the hospital module in it. But other than that, it was getting in a Cuddy Red as an ambulance and going to a medical facility. Then we get introduced into the medevacs, the ones that are the Apollos, right? The RSI ships would become a middle ground type of thing, where it could handle more people, deal with greater injuries, types of injuries. But it didn't come off as an ambulance. It came off as a medevac, right? They had the capability of tier 2, tier 3, and the modularity of even a T1 bed inside of it. Then they expanded one more time. And mind you, before the Apollo, there was the big, remember the big headache that came up with when all of a sudden you couldn't spawn in the Cuddy Red anymore? Remember all the upheaval that happened with that, guys, where everybody lost their minds and, I bought this Cuddy Red. And mind you, it was always supposed to be just an ambulance. It was never supposed to be this spawn point, right? But people, and the reason why I'm sharing this is because the lore was supposed to be the Cuddy Red was an ambulance. That was it. It wasn't in the lore. It was not a spawn point. But for mechanics' sake, they gave it to us as a spawn point temporarily. So trying to distinguish what is lore and what's going to be held onto that's been written versus, and I'm talking about in the descriptions of the ships, right? Versus what we actually do in development. How do we avoid those things, determining which one is the right one? Because while we're playing it in development, the Cuddy Red now is back to a respawn point again, right?
Right. But they never said, if I remember correctly, I'm gonna tell you right now, if I remember correctly, they had the tiers out there for a long time, including when the Cuddy Red was introduced. Remember, the tiers were flipped at one point. Remember, tier 1 was a tier 3. Okay, and then they said we got to correct that, we got to change that. But they never specifically said at that time which ships were going to have what tiers. So I can see that generality and that vagueness,
right,
like that, to open up the doors as to how they're going to move things around.
But the Cuddy Red was always, from its description, an ambulance. It was never a point that if you died, you were going to respawn in it.
Yes.
Now they gave it to us, allowing us to do it, right?
Right. I mean, but whose definition? I mean, everybody has a different version of what an ambulance is. I mean,
ain't nobody resurrect. Well, I guess if you died and give you shock treatment, you come back.
On an ambulance. I mean, so
yeah, but that's pushing it. That's pushing it. I get what you're saying. Yeah,
you leave the sense of vagueness there, of generality there,
but it wasn't a spawn point.
It gives you room. It gives you room.
You know what? This is some more of that Sith bringing people back from the dead stuff. That's what this is.
I'll just give you a hedge moment to where when you write things down, you don't make it so specific. That's just like law, guys. Just like when you're writing law, you don't want to make it too specific.
No, you don't want to box yourself in. No, agree.
Yeah, you box yourself in.
I get it.
So when you're making lore, you put things in generalities and some type of vagueness to where it allows for growth and it allows for change.
Right. No, and Hook just says this: was the Carrack or the Endeavor introduced as a spawn point? Only the Endeavor was. The Carrack and the 890 were never supposed to be spawn points. Okay. In fact, that's one of the reasons why people bought Endeavors back in the early days, because they thought if they had an org and they went into some form of combat, they would have an Endeavor out there with the hospital. Mind you, it's a hospital. If you ever see the hospital module on Endeavor, it's got like 3 or 4 floors on it. It's not a freaking Apollo. It is a hospital. Okay.
But we weren't told either that the Carrack was going to what tier bed a Carrack was going to have.
I'm not talking about tier beds.
A higher tier.
I'm not talking about tiers. You're talking about tiers. I'm talking about, can you respawn in it? That's all I'm talking about. I don't care if it's a tier 1, 2, or 3. The only places for respawning, and correct me if I'm wrong, y'all, in the early days was the hospital.
The hospitals.
That was it.
Right. Hospital.
That was it.
Right.
Okay. And so my point is that I can understand, to your point, Kelosal, the confusion of while the game is being developed, that maybe one day I get into a ship and all of a sudden I can respawn in this. But later, when things become 1.0,
I got to look at the.
Will that still be the factor? Yeah, and I'm saying some things are lore, and some things are just what we're doing in the game for development's sake. That's what I'm saying, and separating development's sake
or current system's sake,
or system's sake,
maybe
or system's
there
sake.
is gameplay about right now, for example, I go incapacitated. I have an hour and 27 minutes right, before I die.
Yeah,
maybe. Can stabilize that. Maybe that timer starts clicking down faster for certain types of injuries.
Yeah.
And you can stabilize that timer and work on me. And there's medical gameplay of
that goes into
ambulance journey from the site to the hospital. And your job is to just keep me alive till you can get me in a tier 1 bed.
Yeah.
Right. But that system isn't built out yet.
Yeah.
Right. So
Captain Jones just hit on that. He's right. I do remember that and what you're saying too, Cap, that there was supposed to be, like when you came back, you weren't completely 100%, that it brought you back enough, but that was it. If I'm remembering correctly, you would still have to go, like when we drug ourselves right now, right? You know, we do the drugs that you can walk better, but you ain't 100%. You know what I mean? It's just a temporary thing. You know, you're still going to have to go to a hospital. You ain't
crisp.
Yeah. Yeah, you still got to go to a hospital, you know, to be back at 100%. And I thought I remember there was even some degradation aspects of even doing that. But that was an original Death of a Spaceman, but I could be wrong. Maybe I'm mixing my games up. I don't remember, but I thought there was like a degradation every time you went back to the hospital. There was something with your DNA that degraded that would affect you, but I can't. Like I said, I can't remember it all.
Well, that's where Olympus comes in. At yes, there was supposed to be some degradation.
Right. Okay.
And Olympus is supposed to be the company that you're supposed to be utilizing in terms of revitalization and things like that.
Right. Okay. Alrighty, let's hit number 9. Dangers of lore. New lore is invented purely to justify a system. Now, I think that there's nothing wrong with new lore. But I do wonder if can the danger be that if it doesn't match up, if this new lore they just threw it just to give an excuse for why this was done. Like we were talking about elite. Go Kelosal, you got another example?
Like Kiadi Mundi being born 40 years before he was born. Over there with Acolyte. Kiadi Mundi is 105 years old.
Like that.
93 when he died.
Yes, like that. Yes, like that. For those of you who are not watching Star Wars Acolyte, just bear with us here. Yeah. Okay, no. That's a good point. Lore. That's why I said you have to make sure that new lore does not conflict with the old lore, right? Or the structures that have been in place before. If it just doesn't make sense, you know, you can create new lore, you know, and CIG is going to be doing that. But I'm sure they have to make sure that it matches up, that they don't put something in there that conflicts with something else in the game that can be something that actually affects the way players view the game or how they play the game. You guys got any thoughts on this one? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not experiencing lore in this game. Mm-hmm. Fast car cracking me up about the over under. I'm not experiencing lore in this game as being invented purely to justify a system, but I have experienced lore that arrives to accompany a new system, right? Mm-hmm. So Jumptown 2.0 arrives and we get lore about drug trade routes and criminal syndicates, right? Pyro's about to arrive and we get lore about gangs, right? Stuff begins to accompany new systems and new events and new mechanics, but I haven't experienced in this game new lore being invented to justify a system, right?
Right.
That would be them. I keep hammering on this Ursa Medevac respawn situation.
Yeah, that
would be them instead of saying what Griff said earlier, which is they told us they're testing these things, for them to implement it and then create some lore around it, right? Yeah. To like write out all kinds of paragraphs and put them on Galactopedia about how this is the new thing, right? So
well, let me ask
I haven't experienced that.
The only positive thing I can say is this encourages creativity. I mean, that's the only positive I can say from this.
And accountability too, though. And accountability. You need to make sure that it matches up. You just can't throw it in for the sake of it and not pay attention to what you've established with the community ahead of time either. Unless it's a justifiable reason, you know.
Right. Because it just means otherwise it's bad writing.
So could I ask you a question, Kelosal? And I asked Captain this too. Does Death of a Spaceman need to be updated? And what I mean by updated, I'm saying, does it need to be reissued to say, hey, this is where we are? Or does the new tweaks, because the life of a player is important in this game. You know, so much of it will be surrounding that. And I think the reason why it comes up as such an issue is because people want to know, if I've done all this work to build my character out, whether it's 3 weeks, 3 months, or 3 years, when I lose that character, what happens next? So does CIG need to say, what Chris said 10 years ago is still the route we're going? Do they need to say, what Chris said years ago was our base plate, but this is where we're looking to go at now? Do you think that that's something that will help the community when it comes to this whole thing of respawn, healing, health, all that stuff?
I just think there needs to be a little bit more information on how that's going to happen and what that's going to look like. I'll give you an example of a game that already has something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and that's Star Wars: The Old Republic. Star Wars: The Old Republic at one point allowed you to choose. Let's say I go ahead and choose a Sith, right? And all the powers that a Sith has, in terms of lightning and things like that and so forth. And then it allowed you at one point to go ahead and become a family member of that character that you built. And from that, you would develop a trait.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you would develop a trait within that family member. So let's say I decide to be a Jedi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Such a bad term. You decide to be a Jedi, and then all of a sudden, I'm a Jedi using Force Lightning, the purple one, not the yellow one,
right?
The purple one,
right?
And I got that trait from the Sith family member in that tree. So we see evidence of games having that type of piece within the family tree.
Right.
I'm hoping that they can find some way. That would be up to Chris in terms of how he's going to develop that. I look forward to that information. I'm not going to tell him don't do it, scratch it, because we don't know what's going on. I would like to see how he's going to implement that, in the game. Maybe keep it simple, but that would be up to him to do that. But there are games that do have some references to that type of, I guess, connection.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The update needs to come, but not a moment before they're sure and they know.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
So we hang on, not to be funny, then we just have to hang on to the vision from 12 years ago and see where it goes.
Well, and because the way they issued it 12 years ago connoted surety.
Yeah.
They feel sure about something when they offer up a Q&A.
Yeah.
Right. And that post in February 5th of 2013 not only laid out what Death of a Spaceman was going to be, but laid out Q&A as if they're trying to anticipate all the questions we might have and answer them ahead of time. They were like, this is how it's going to be. People there was questions in the Q&A like, I have lore and history and background for my character. I don't want to lose it. And the answer was not, the answer was, we're telling you this now so that you role play and lore your character and history your character appropriately. That was the answer.
Yeah.
Right.
Nice
so they were sure
that's where they wanted to go. Yeah.
Yeah, they were sure about where they were going with it. And now I think there will be some tweaking, some shifting, some re-examination. Don't issue another thing about it until you know where you're going with it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they know yet. I don't think they're fully baked on it yet.
Yeah, I think it'll be nice if we saw a teaser or some type of cutscene in Squadron 42 of somebody who's actually experienced that. In Squadron 42, maybe they passed away, or they came back and they lost a limb and they got a prosthetic leg or arm or things like that. If we could see some type of evidence of that in game, it'd be great.
Yeah, because the lore is that this is a relatively recent development in the verse, right? So you could have something in Squadron 42 that was sort of like the military origins of this technology, right? You could have something where the first time it really they try it and it doesn't work, and they try it again and it works, and somebody's got a cybernetic arm as a result or something like that. So
I think that you're gonna see Wing Commander where you get in the 21 gun salute and they ship your body out into space. I think that's what you're gonna see in Squadron, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, but they'll bring Gary Oldman back though. You won't do it for us, but they'll do it for like Gary Oldman.
Okay, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. All right, let's hit our very last one, number 10. For the dangers of lore, systems are used as a defense for not changing the lore. This one's interesting. This gets into, when I read this in the article, they were doing it in context of like a World of Warcraft type of thing. But the limitations of a system, technically, we're talking about the technical side of it or gameplay side of it, are used as a defense to not change the lore. How can that happen in Star Citizen? I'm trying to pick a good scenario. You got one, Kelosal?
The fact that you guys want to change the Imperator election from 10 to 5.
You said you guys. That was Griff. I like my current Imperator. I want to see her all the way to 2030.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that could be one of them. There's a whole bunch of people. I mean, I get it because everybody's like, time, and I get that piece. But that's one piece. They could literally sit there and say, no, we're not going to do that, and we're going to keep the Imperator at elections every 10 years. It's been that way in lore for centuries.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, after the messes, in things like that. So
I get it. I was thinking more along what you all suggested about the limitations of Elite, where there was a technical reason for why they could not do what they thought, and instead of them changing the lore, they just left it. And there's a break in that. You can't walk around your ship, you can't exit your ship, you can't get out and walk on a planet. And instead of them going in later and changing their lore or changing the background about saying this is what you should be able to do, you couldn't. And there were people that were disappointed because that was a part of what they thought they could do, but they just could not design it, whether technical limitations or just the will not to make it happen, whatever the case may be for them. It became a problem for them. And unfortunately, to such a degree that many of the people stopped playing the game once they found out we're not going to deliver that to you. That was a problem.
I mean,
yeah, it wasn't just that they weren't going to deliver it. It was a dismissal of the idea of it.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Why are you even thinking about this?
Yeah.
It felt very much like, don't you all have phones? Diablo dismissal. Right? It felt that level of disrespectful.
Yeah.
One of the ways you can get around these things, though, is that you can use your other systems to shift lore. Like, so for example, with Colosal's example, you don't have to change the Imperator decade-long thing, but if people are feeling like, hey, that was in 2020, I never even got a chance to be involved in that,
right?
Then you could create a dynamic event
assassination
that generates like a season of the Long Knives, right? Mm-hmm. You could have a series of assassinations back and forth, right? You have an assassination, people mourn, you have a vote, you have another assassination, but you can prevent an assassination by doing this dynamic event.
And that'd be cool.
And you can, so they can use some of the things that they are building out to create energies and have us have experiences without changing the lore, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I would love for there to be some type of in-game thing like that would happen dynamically, and depending on what the outcome is, man, there's a lot of cool things you could do with that. Wow. Because in Eve, one of the things I used to like was that there was a race in Eve that would actually come into the game because of the developers. And when these jokers showed up, you remember in Galaxies, Kelosal, when the Empire would show up sometimes randomly, like you unexpectedly, they'd come land, and Vader and them would actually land in a shuttle. And when
choke the bejesus out of people, and people try to go up to
them. And it was something, and people would literally run out of the town when you would hear that something dynamic like that would happen in the game. And it would be kind of cool if there was some type of something that happens in the game that forces a vote, right? That forces something to happen.
I don't know. I mean, we got some lore that could lead to that now. I mean, where's Sit World, right? Where's the money that was supposed to be building that? If you know the lore about that, well, that's Imperator Addison's. That's it. You could have an assassination. I haven't seen that in the UEE. Haven't seen that. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Live the Empire.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll see. We'll see what happens. What the biggest thing is, we want to encourage you guys to dig into lore. Now, let me ask this final question as we get ready to wrap things up to you guys, and maybe chat. You guys can toss into this too.
We did get a viewer question, Griff. Just so you know.
Oh yeah, I saw it. I'm going to get to it in a hot second here. Okay. Here's one of my questions I want to ask the chat, and also to my colleagues here. This is an honesty question. 1 to 10. 10 meaning I'm really into lore and I look it up and I try to find it, and when there's a book or a scroll or an article, I read it. And 0 or 1 meaning I really don't pay attention to the lore. I just play the game. I figure it out as I go along. I ain't that interested in it. I'm just in the game for whatever I see from the narrative there. Drop your numbers in the chat real quick. 10 being you're a lore hog, fish and pasta. A one being that you really don't pay attention to lore. I'm just kind of curious. You guys drop it in for us. Cap, let me go with you first. What's your number for lore?
I'm a 10 plus 10 plus 10. Right.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I read everything
Okay.
that they give us, and I enjoy the stories. If you all haven't read that posted a reposted story about the Sully family and the indentured person in the Banu community, read that. That's incredible. Get insight on the Banu.
Okay.
For me, the lore is part of this journey, right? And I'm into simulation experiences that give me the whole wraparound. So yeah, I'm deeply into it.
Okay. Kelosal, how about you?
I put 30. You know, I'm just a huge lore nut. I mean, in order to play a game, you got to have lore, especially something of this deep of what they're trying to do for gameplay. It has to have lore. No lore, no game. I don't care what type of gameplay you have. No lore, nothing of interest. Nothing to read. No history, no background. You don't get no stuff from me. And especially, we can talk about things for days. We talk about the Banu Protectorate that Kat was bringing up. We talk about the Banu and its 16 territories, and part of them that they control, the Caliban, Orion, Tiber. We can talk about those. We can talk about how the UEE, when they found out the other territory that the Vanduul have, the ones that's highly Vanduul citizens, all start with the letter V. Right? Right. It's just interesting to see all that type of stuff, and all that stuff is already available. Which, by the way, everybody should go to Robert Space Industries and then go to Comlink, and you'll see a lot of that stuff there, including the commercials that Kat was talking about, dealing with vehicles, including questions and answers, including stuff from Invictus, including all these lores and things, including the 16 different systems that they have short things about. It's just a vast. And go to the Galactopedia. It's a vast wealth of information that a lot of people really need to go ahead and take time to look at, so they can really understand where we're going.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, it looks like I looked at some of the numbers that we had here, and it's only the average on these numbers came out between anywhere from 6 to 7, maybe even closer to 8. A lot of people are really into reading some form of the lore. I saw CC said he's a 3, but he'd like to be a 7. And maybe some of that will also come about the fact that as the game progresses and gets more solid, people might start leaning more into it. I know on a game that's still being built and broken and, half there, a quarter there, whatever, it's very difficult to try to go in and want to absorb so much of the lore, especially when it comes to things such as the other systems. We only have Stanton. There's only so much. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot there in Stanton. But when you start talking about the other systems and stuff, we want to encourage you guys too, with CIG starting to do this expansion and going into other systems. Take some time. You find some really interesting stuff. Watch the Lore Makers episodes that were also produced by CIG. Some of that information is going to be retconned. I can tell you that now, but there's a lot of it that is still very relevant. And hopefully it'll help you guys have a better idea of what Star Citizen, at least the MMO side of it, is going to be. So we want to encourage that. We do have a couple questions that people have sent us, and I'm going to read. Let's see, which one do we want to read first? This one's from Jade Star Watcher. It says, if you wanted to change any aspect of Star Citizen's lore, either general or specific, what would it be?
Yeah, the first thing that pops to mind for me is I would change lasers to beam weapons, and the current energy weapons like the Demico and those types of weapons to like energy pulse weapons. We saw in a most recent ISC that we can do beam weapons, right? So a laser to me is a beam, right? So I'd like to see specific beam weapons and them called lasers, and the current energy weapons that are called lasers called pulse or pulse energy weapons. That's what I would change.
Okay. Kelosal?
I would like to see the Kilrathi. I want my cats back. I want the cats. I want the cats. I want the cats from Wing Commander. I want them in there. I understand the logistics and things like that from that piece, but boy, if they just let Chris Roberts have his golden baby and give me those cats are dangerous. just like they are in real life. So I mean, it would be fantastic if we're able to see the character.
I like the idea of the cats, except for whenever I think about the cats, I think about what they looked like in the movie. And it just is like, no.
Yeah. I don't mind if they acted the way in the movie, but they need to look like they look on the cover of Wing Commander. I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Because in the movie, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah. Movie,
y'all went to Chuck E. Cheese's and got them bad fellas made. I know they went to Chuck E. Cheese's and got them things made. I don't know where they got those, but oh God, those things were horrible in there.
The skinless cat, that green eyes and stuff like that. No, I don't want that. I want the furry cats that look like lions, but were very fierce and
Oh God. Okay, is there something in the lore that I would want to have changed? There's nothing I can think of off the top of my head, but I do like the idea of what Captain Serious said about the elections. I would love to. Oh, I know. I take that back. There is something in the lore that I would want to see, not change, but something implemented. And that's the fact that the way the Senate and people are voted in, I would actually hope that would become something that is game backer based, where backers actually get to run for office. I would love for them to create a council of players. Eve has this. I can't keep stealing ideas from Eve, but I would love to have something that there are actually human players who are brought together as a council, and CIG uses them for something legitimately. I'm not referring necessarily in game, but maybe to get feedback from them. You get to do a term for 1 year or something like that or whatever, but you get to be a feedback loop for CIG with things that are being implemented in the game. Just something like that brings better communication, but that these people could run for office for. But I know that's a bit of a stretch, but I would love to see something like that happen in the game. But I know that's a lot of a stretch to ask for. Okay, I think, we had one other question. Fastcart asked this question: who on the cast is familiar with the very first lore post? What is contained within the link? Okay, now I remember this from years ago. I don't know how Fastcart pulls stuff out of the freaking dustbin, but I'm going to put it in chat for you guys so you guys can see what it is he's talking about. But that one there is it. Now, mind you, Fastcart, only thing I can say about this is that this was put out the same year on October 10th, which is the anniversary of Star Citizen, the official anniversary. And all it says is 2942, which would have been that year, right? And then it says today. I don't know. Other than the fact that means today everything is starting. I don't know if you guys want to see that link. Tell me what you guys think of it.
Yeah, let's see.
It's in. I put it in chat. You guys see it?
Hold on. I mean, is that when Chris Roberts gave out his intro video?
Yeah, that's October 10th. That was it. It says today. Okay. And I'm assuming that was launch day for this project.
Right. Yep, that's what I assumed too.
Yeah. I remember this from a long time ago, but that's, I came in afterward. I wasn't there when it got put out there, but I do remember this post. And I'm just assuming that's all it is, Fastcard. Unless you got some deep secret thing that we don't know about, then let us know. But I just figured that's what today meant. This is the day that it's kicking off. Jade says yes. Okay.
There you go. Ta-da!
Stutter said none of you on the panel are seeing the secret hidden Gian message in that post. No, we're not. Neither are we imagining it either. So no, I don't think we're seeing that. Okay. All right. Well, listen, we are going to wrap this thing up. We covered a lot of ground today, and this was a great opportunity for us to talk with you guys about lore. And I think CIG is doing a pretty good job with their lore, but we really want to encourage you guys to dig into the lore of this game. It's going to be important later on. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but just find time, even if it's, like I said, the subjects that you're just interested in. Maybe it's your ship manufacturer. Maybe it's a certain character in the game. Those lore posts are not that long. I know it seems like it is sometimes, but you'll read them and say, oh, it only took me 5 minutes to read this thing. Or to Colosal's point, use a voice to text thing or text to voice thing and AI, whatever, to absorb some of this stuff, because there's tons and tons of the information. And we do want to, again, encourage you guys to don't forget about the lore maker videos that CIG has put out. They still are relevant, and there's still a lot of great information there, especially if there's a system that you've heard about and you're curious about. Take a look at them. I think you guys will enjoy them. Okay. All righty then, gentlemen. Let's get ready to wrap things up. Let's see, Admiral. I'm sorry, Admiral. Captain. I'm going to give you. I gave you an upgrade there. Captain,
Space Marshal, General.
Captain, would you talk about Soul Talk? Colossal, you cover voices, and I'll cover next week.
Yeah, so Soul Talk happens every Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. It's hosted by the other founder of the Soul Citizens, Fast Card FC. And what we do there on Soul Talk is we cover the news, information, insights of of the project of Star Citizen and some Squadron 42. Mm-hmm. So the same way that CIG will announce some this week in Star Citizen, Fast Cart will partner up with members of the community to review that, and you are welcome to join us in that endeavor by coming into the Discord, hanging out, and talking about the news of the past week with Fast Cart and others. Soul Talk, Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern Time.
And on Saturdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central, we have Soul Voices. We bring in, Griff and other members and hosts come in and they talk about certain types of articles and scripts that the community posted, mostly on Reddit and other internet sites that we pull up everything about Star Citizens and ask questions and ask people to go ahead and even try to talk about those questions, concerns that the community may have about the game. There are from time to time we have frequent hosts that come in from the player headers, so that's a good time to go ahead and see that. It's also part of Pod Set Saturdays that we have as well. Soul Citizen starts off at 2 p.m. and then it goes over after Soul Voices. It goes over to Paul Shelley on the Astropub, and then it goes over after that. It goes to Relay, the OGs of Star Citizen. So come in and join us on Saturdays at 2 p.m. Eastern.
All righty. And next week, we're doing a show called The Rule of Cool. CIG has tossed this phrase out so many times, and some of us have too. And we're going to be talking about what are those things that Star Citizen has in their game that, sometimes people might feel, yeah, it's cool, but it ain't practical. Or it doesn't match up with science, or this doesn't make sense, but it's cool. Are motorcycles cool in the year 2954? Some people say, yeah, they'll be cool. There's a picture there of the Sayulan. Is it cool or is it impractical? We're going to be talking about all that stuff next week, so hopefully you guys can join us.
There's one answer to that question. It is absolutely 100% fundamentally cool.
Fundamentally cool. Let's see if it's fundamentally functional. That'll be what we're talking about next week too. Okay. All right. Well, listen, again, we want to thank you guys for being here with us. Thank you again. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow to us. You can check out our merchandise. The links are always at the bottom of our videos on YouTube. We really appreciate all the support and the fact that you guys spent a Sunday evening with us today. We want to give out a special remembrance also for our good friend Nomad 1701. His memorial service was held on this past Friday in Dallas, Texas. And Buster the Destroyer was there. She delivered a resolution that we wrote from Soul Citizens. We also posted that on our Twitter. If you guys want to see it, check it out. But we just want you to know that we haven't forgotten him. We'll always remember him. We really appreciate his presence being with us here as a member of the Soul Citizens. So once again,
absolutely, thank
you guys for everything. As we always tell you guys every week, please take care of yourselves. Stay safe. And we're going to send you guys over to King Chaos. Give him some love. If you like what you see, follow him. And Colossal, Cap, thank you guys for all you guys did today. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
All righty. Let's sign off. You go kick us off, Cap.
Peace.
Colossal.
Love.
And Soul. You guys take care.